first question. So why did you go on the climate march?
Right. So I feel very strongly that climate science is real science and that we should be supporting it. Coincidentally, I think it was a day or two after the climate march, a lot of the public data on climate science was removed from the EPA website. So that's why I marched. I marched because I feel like it's important that people in Pottstown come together and in their localities that they come together and support the validity of the sciences.
So what are the kind of data that they took down from the website?
Sadly, I didn't do a snapshot of what the links were before, but there are several articles, I think, in the Washington Post and the New York Times that you can go through and see what was available and what's not. There are ways you can still solicit specific reports, but the accessibility of that data is not as publicly available as it had been.
I see. So what was it like during that day? Like, what did you guys basically do?
It was actually very impressive because I didn't expect so many people to come out. And when we walked down the street from the Hill School, it was just a tremendous showing of support for climate science. And I didn't expect anything like that in Pottstown. And I was really proud to be part of this community and proud to be surrounded by people who were so interested in supporting the sciences and one another in this effort.
So when you're saying for the climate science, is that the purpose of the march?
That march, this particular march that was here in Pottstown, was specifically in support of climate science. And basically the validity of climate science.
So it's like a bit different from those marches that were going on in Washington D.C., like in opposing to like the new administration policy, like environmental policy and stuff.
So there have been a variety of marches. I mean, pretty much every weekend you can go somewhere and find a march. I was part of Hill's participation in the Women's March in Philadelphia, and that was a fabulous experience. And last week, I know several of my colleagues or 2 weeks ago, were in Washington, D.C. to support the March for Science in Washington. This was a little bit more specific because this was targeted at climate science. You know, we are one of the few countries in the world that even has a discussion about this. The rest of the world seems to be smart enough to understand that climate science is real. I'm a very big believer in science, in facts supporting our assertions and not making broad generalizations without having research-based facts to back up your assertions. And that is why I was marching. I feel like it's important that not only we give validity to science in general, but that we take the time to ask the questions about what data supports these assertions, and when it is fact-based, that we share it and that it's publicly available, and that we allow data about these important things that should trigger policy decisions to be accessible by people, like the population of the United States.
Okay. So, what was the most memorable thing that happened during the march that you remember?
Where's the pause button?
Are you gonna talk about the guy, the drop your phone guy?
This one. So how do you think Hill could be more active in these kind of issues?
So when we were at the march, when we got to the Riverfront Park, we met Jim Durr, who is the head of the Environmental Advisory Council here in Pottstown, and I work with him. I'm also on that council. And we were talking about how Hill students could be more actively involved in the legislation and the regulations that we impose at a very local level regarding sustainability. Things like the codes that we enforce and efficiencies that we require for new buildings in the borough of Pottstown. Water issues like stormwater management, which our team is tackling with the rain barrel efforts. I feel like there are many ways, but we need to get out in front of those issues and have students explore leadership opportunities by participating in borough council meetings and the local politics and understanding what the process is of the local legislation, how the codes enforcement works, how those codes are passed, and be part of that process, and really maybe do some research on how we might be able to make proposals on behalf of the Hill or the Pottstown community at large.
Right. So the students' involvement is like the most important thing in raising the awareness for these issues.
Right. Yes, I agree with that. I think that that's, in my experience here at the Hill, the best way for me to be able to teach students anything about environmental science and sustainability is to engage them actively. So take them to these meetings or take them on a field trip where we can tour the recycling plant and see how things are recycled in the borough and kind of dig deeper into why we do it this way or what other ways we could do it and what technological solutions we might be able to propose as future leaders and future engineers to better these current processes that we can witness here at a local level. So engagement, I think getting students actively engaged in participating in these processes and not just sitting in a classroom and listening to a lecture and learning that way, but actually getting our hands dirty, working in the community garden and working at the Ricketts Center and volunteering for things and touring places.
Yeah. So do you think it was a educational and meaningful experience for you guys?
I think it was. I mean, I personally got a good deal out of it. I think the speakers were very good. I think that I talked to Grace Huang afterwards, and she had never been in a protest march before and didn't really know what to expect, and she seemed to have a very positive experience, and it was a lot bigger than she had expected too. So I felt like it was important that the participation moved some of the students to think about activism differently and maybe the necessity of activism, and it prompted a lot of really important discussions, I think, about how change is made from grassroots level in other countries and how it's made here. And so I think just the discussion that was prompted by that participation was invaluable.
Okay. Awesome. So that's all my questions.
Yay.
I can send that to you.
Okay. You can pause it.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm concerned that I don't know if anybody knows that Dr. McGrath was there.